I live stream it again. My phone ring. Okay. I'm gonna do two Bible sermon here right now. Bear with me.
Nice to have virtue.
No, not at all. They frame it as the essential key, the absolute gateway to receiving what they call divine favor, a genuinely blessed life.
Right from the start.
It really does. That's where we're diving in this central paradox. Everything around us, the hustle culture, needing credit, the whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps idea.
Yeah, get yourself noticed, climb the ladder.
Exactly. And the core text we're looking at just flips that completely.
It really does. The source immediately points to James 4:10. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up.
A total reversal. The world says you lift yourself up.
But the scripture says, no, you bow low, and then the lifting happens. It's a fundamentally different approach to, well, everything.
And I think it's crucial how the source tackles that common idea, that humility equals weakness or being passive.
Absolutely. They're very clear. It's not about being a doormat. The material actually defines it as strength under control.
Strength under control.
Yeah.
What kind of strength are we talking about here?
Well, it's not about physical muscle. It's the strength of the ego, isn't it? That drive to be in charge, to get the credit, to, build your own kingdom.
I see. So humility, in this view, is choosing to put that ego, that self-will, under a higher authority.
Precisely. Recognizing that the real source of favor, of blessing, is actually outside of yourself. That's really our mission today, to unpack why that surrender is presented as the path.
Okay, let's dig into that. The source talks a lot about a truly humble heart and this idea of bowing low before the Lord.
Yeah.
How does the source explain that? What does it look like practically?
It's presented as much more than just, say, being modest or downplaying things you did well.
Right, it's not just false modesty.
No, the material frames it as a position of fundamental dependency on God. That's the before the Lord part. It means actually letting go of chasing fame or recognition.
So any success or talent you have isn't for your own glory.
According to this view, no. It's seen as a gift to be used in service. The humble heart, as the source puts it, receives blessings and gives thanks. It doesn't demand them or, brag about achieving things solo.
And the sources seem quite direct about the promised results of this. They bring up Proverbs 22.4. By humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life.
Yes, that's a key verse for their argument.
When they say riches and honor, are they talking literal wealth and status? Or is it something else?
That's a really important distinction they make. The sources handle it quite carefully. They do suggest material blessings can happen.
Okay.
But the main emphasis seems to be on the spiritual and relational wealth. The deep sense of peace, God's favor, the security that comes from being aligned with his purpose.
So walking humbly means walking with God. And that relationship is the treasure.
That's the core idea. And the honor isn't about getting applause from people, but it's the dignity and value that God himself gives you, a kind of inherent worth.
That clarifies things. The source then lists out more specific benefits too: favor, peace, and protection. It almost sounds like humility puts you under a kind of spiritual covering.
That's a good way to put it, like taking the target off your back that pride tends to paint there. If you accept the premise that humility keeps you open to guidance,
then it makes sense that it's opposite. Pride would be the thing that shuts that guidance out.
Exactly, which brings us right to that contrast. Pride. The source is unambiguous. Pride blocks the blessing, full stop.
And they use that really vivid metaphor, the architectural one.
It is striking, isn't it? The humble heart is pictured as an open doorway. Grace, help, guidance, it can all flow in and through.
But
Pride builds a wall, a big, thick one, fueled by that feeling of, I don't need anyone, I've got this. And the source argues grace simply can't get through a wall like that.
That sounds, spiritually dangerous. What does the material say happens if you keep that wall up?
It points to a pretty stark warning from Proverbs 16.18. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall.
Destruction and a fall. That's serious.
And the analysis suggests it's not just about losing your job or status, but a deeper spiritual kind of collapse. Because pride essentially says, I don't need help.
Which cuts you off from the source of help when things inevitably get too big to handle alone.
Precisely. When your own strength runs out, and it always does eventually, the fall is inevitable if you've walled off support.
And the source gets really specific about how pride operates, calling out Things like,
I can do it myself. That's a big one. Or I don't need to pray about this. I know what to do. Or even I don't need forgiveness for that.
those sound incredibly familiar in today's world. That constant pressure to seem like you have it all together.
Right. It's a deep psychological insight in the source material. Pride's basic message is self-sufficiency. It pushes you towards isolation, refusing to admit need or error.
And Source claims this pride kills the spirit.
Yes, by cutting it off. While humility, which is basically admitting need, is what revives it, reconnects it to that divine source.
So, connecting the dots here, the argument is that letting go of our own plans, that ego-driven pride, our personal will, that's actually how God can step in.
That's exactly the mechanism described. You surrender your flawed blueprint, basically, and the promise is that God then opens doors takes you places you couldn't reach on your own steam.
It's a trade-off.
Neat.
Your control for his guidance and elevation.
That's the essence of it, laying down the ego to receive something far greater.
Now, to really grasp this kind of radical humility, the Source points to Jesus Christ as the ultimate example, not arriving like a conquering king.
On a golden chariot, no, but as a servant.
And the specific example they highlight is him washing his disciples' feet. Why that act? What makes it the perfect picture of this strength under control?
Well, you have to think about the context back then. Everyone was expecting a Messiah who'd be a powerful leader, maybe a military figure to overthrow Roman rule.
Someone to restore national glory.
Exactly. So for him to choose the role of a servant, and not just any servant role, but performing the task reserved for the lowest slave, it was scandalous, a theological bombshell.
It completely subverted expectations.
Totally. And the source uses Philippians 2, those verses from 5 to 8, to explain it. It stresses that Jesus, even though he was divine in the form of God,
He chose to empty himself.
yes, deliberately humbled himself, became obedient all the way to death on a cross. It wasn't weakness, it was a conscious choice to relinquish his divine rights for the sake of the mission. Strength used in service, not for self-display.
The Source really emphasizes this as power expressed through love. Willingly trading a throne for a crown of thorns, and that's how victory was won. It really does redefine winning.
It turns worldly definitions of power and victory completely upside down.
So if that's the ultimate model, what does this mean for people trying to follow this path today, especially, in competitive fields where taking credit is often expected?
Yeah, that's the practical challenge, isn't it? The material doesn't pull punches. It says if you want to be like Christ, the instruction is clear. Walk in humility, speak with love, and serve with joy.
Walk, speak, serve. So the focus shifts.
From trying to be served or getting ahead to actively serving others. Even, perhaps especially, those the world might see as lower on the ladder.
And the Source lays out a kind of progression.
It does. It maps it out. Humility leads to holiness, meaning being set apart for God's purposes. And that holiness leads to heavenly blessing, to that divine favor. It's a pathway where every step seems downward by worldly standards.
But the result is upward lift from God.
Exactly. It's counterintuitive, but central to the argument.
Okay, let's try to wrap this up. The core challenge in this source material, it seems to me, boils down to a fundamental choice.
Right.
It suggests the key to this blessed life isn't about how high we can climb using our own efforts,
But about how low we're willing to bow before God. It's about posture.
and looking back at the promised outcomes of doing that.
The return on that surrender is presented as immense. Humbling ourselves brings peace because we stop trying to carry the world on our shoulders.
Letting go of that burden.
Yes, and surrendering our will leads to true strength, the strength that comes from alignment with the divine. The honor received isn't fleeting fame, it's lasting.
And the blessings that follow are described as secure things that circumstances can't just snatch away.
That's a key point. They're seen as eternal, not temporary like worldly success can be.
So the final call to action from the source is pretty clear. Lower the shields, take down that wall of pride.
Open the heart, that doorway, and allow God's favor and guidance to actually come in.
It's a compelling argument. So let's leave our listeners with this thought, building on the sources. If strength really is found in this kind of surrender, this strength under control, what would be the clearest sign, the most defining marker of that kind of strength in our modern lives? Is it maybe letting go of the need to win an argument?
Or perhaps openly admitting a major mistake at work without making excuses.
Or maybe even genuinely celebrating a rival's success? What does that strength look like for you today?
Yeah, and maybe reflect on the contrast between the kind of exaltation the world pushes that temporary spotlight versus the lifting up the source material promises. It really asks us to think differently about success itself, doesn't it? Measuring maybe not by how high we climb, but by how low we're willing to bow.
Finger of God comes from a sermon by Mario Marrero Jr. And, when we say deep dive here, we're immediately trying to get past the literal picture, like a human finger. It's small, it points, taps, maybe writes. But the moment scripture, the finger of God, that whole image just, it expands, right? Suddenly not about physical size at all. It becomes about this focused, undeniable divine action, power, authority, presence.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. We're dealing with a metaphor here that's incredibly potent, yet also very precise. So our mission today really is to unpack how this specific sermon lays it out. It identifies these four distinct functions of the finger of God. It's not just saying God is powerful in a general sense. It's about mapping these four specific ways his authority works, according to this source. The goal is that you, listening, come away with really clear, synthesized knowledge of what the sermon's arguing.
Okay, sounds good. Let's jump right in then. The first function, this one feels foundational. It's about permanence. The sermon says the finger writes his word.
Exactly. And the core text for this is Exodus 31.18. That moment on Sinai. It's absolutely critical because it says God himself gives Moses the two tablets of stone. And it specifies they were written with the finger of God.
Right. And that detail, the stone, the finger. Why is that so specific? Why not just say God wrote it or used his hand?
Well, the sermon really focuses on two things here: permanence and precision. Using the finger suggests, intention, focus, like a careful inscription. And writing it on stone, that immediately signals this isn't temporary. It's not like a note on parchment that fades or gets changed. It confirms the divine origin, makes it wholly eternal, absolutely fixed. The source material is very clear on this. What God writes, especially like this, can't be erased by anyone. It's the standard forever.
Okay, so we established this absolute unerasable law, set in stone, literally. But then the sermon connects us to us personally. It moves from the mountain, from the temple, right into the individual. It talks about letting God write his word on the tablets of your heart.
Exactly. That's the bridge. The challenge isn't just to know about the law etched in stone. It's about internalizing it so profoundly that its truth becomes, part of your own core, unchangeable. It's that shift, you see, from an external rule to an internal conviction, linking God's permanence to our own transformation.
That idea of fixed divine authority, it leads pretty naturally into the second function the sermon outlines. This one feels much more active, more confrontational maybe. We go from permanence to a direct show of force. The finger shows his power.
Oh, absolutely. This is probably the most, let's say, dramatic example of that concentrated power. We shift scenes completely, from the quiet, awesome moment on Sinai to the chaos of the plagues down in Egypt, specifically Exodus 8.19.
Okay. This is when Moses and Aaron are facing off against Pharaoh's magicians.
Yeah.
Right? And the magicians have been kind of keeping up, mimicking some of the earlier plagues.
Yeah.
But then comes the gnats.
Right. They try to replicate the plague of gnats, and they just can't. It's beyond them. They fail completely, and it's their reaction that gives us the phrase. They admit defeat. They tell Pharaoh, this is the finger of God.
That confession is huge, isn't it? Coming from them? These guys were skilled in their own arts. They could do some things that looked miraculous, but they hit a limit, something they couldn't explain or copy.
That's the key. They recognize something qualitatively different. They distinguish this power, attributing it specifically to the finger. It suggests this wasn't just brute force, but something focused, precise, almost surgical, an act that just defied all their understanding, human or otherwise.
So the finger here represents those miracles, those wonders that are just immediate, undeniable. Yeah. Things no human can rationalize away.
Exactly. It's a power so immense, so focused, that the sermon notes even demons tremble at his touch. Think about that contrast, not the hand, not the arm, implying maybe sustained effort or broader action. The finger implies that instant, pinpointed power that just stops an adversary cold, a crushing, immediate defeat.
So for you listening, if you're facing something that just feels impossibly big, overwhelming, those situations where your own logic or strength just isn't enough, the application here seems really direct.
It is. It shifts the whole perspective. The sermon's takeaway is basically, when you face an enemy too big for you, that's precisely the moment for the finger of God. Just one touch, one focused act of his power. That's all it takes to overcome what seems insurmountable. It's about recognizing when you need to stop striving and just rely on that divine intervention.
Okay, so from law writing to power display.
Yeah.
That brings us to the third function, the This feels more personal, more about internal change. Liberation. The finger brings freedom.
Yes, and for this, the sermon shifts to the New Testament. It points us directly to Luke 11:20. This is Jesus himself speaking. He's explaining his ministry, how he operates, and he says he casts out demons by the finger of God. That's a direct link. The metaphor is now tied explicitly to deliverance, personal freedom.
Wow, so Jesus claiming the finger of God as the source of his authority over demonic forces.
Yeah.
That really defines it as this focused, redeeming power.
Absolutely. It becomes the active instrument of liberty. The source material digs into this. It's the force that breaks the chains. Chains of sin, spiritual bondage, whatever holds people captive. It points towards a really deep internal cleansing, a kind of spiritual exorcism, you could say. It's about achieving complete freedom, not just feeling a bit better, but a fundamental change in your status from captive to free.
And I like that the sermon, it pushes beyond just a superficial idea of faith here. It makes a point about the difference between just being touched by God, maybe feeling a momentary comfort or awareness, and being truly transformed by that touch.
Yeah, that distinction is vital. It adds depth. Transformation means the chains aren't just rattled, they're shattered, gone. So the application really emphasizes trust. It suggests that this kind of deep deliverance, this casting out of internal demons or strongholds, it requires you to fully surrender to that focused divine power. You have to invite the finger in to do its work, not just on the surface, but deep inside to reshape things.
Okay, that's powerful. Which brings us to the fourth function. And this one, in a way, kind of circles back to how we use our own fingers most often, pointing. The finger points the way direction.
Right. This really rounds out the metaphor scope. We've had law, power, freedom, now guidance. A finger naturally points, indicates a path. And the source draws a direct line here to God guiding Israel.
Through the wilderness, right? He was actively directing his people when they were lost, uncertain.
That raises a question, though, especially after talking about power, confrontation, even judgment implied in breaking chains. When people hear finger of God, maybe they sometimes fear that power being pointed at them in judgment. Does the sermon tackle that? It does, yes.
Yeah.
And it offers a really important clarification, a key nuance. The sermon is explicit. The finger isn't only about judgment, it's also very much about direction. Guidance. In fact, guidance is presented as a core purpose. So it shifts the focus away from purely punishment towards, let's say, purposeful navigation. It affirms that the same ultimate authority that establishes law and defeats enemies is also used lovingly to guide his children
Right.
safely.
So if the finger writes the permanent law, that's function 1, and it also provides this ongoing guidance, function 4, how do those work together day to day when things aren't clear? Is the path always obvious?
Well, the guidance is needed precisely because the path often isn't obvious. That's the point. Think of it like this. The permanent law gives you the map, the fixed moral landscape, the true north. But the direction, the pointing finger, that helps you navigate your specific route through the messy terrain of real life in real time. The lesson for living it out is pretty profound. Follow God's pointing finger, his specific guidance for you. Rather than getting distracted or discouraged by all the noise of human opinions, what the sermon calls man's finger accuses.
That's a great way to put it. Ignore the noise, focus on his direction. Okay, that's a really comprehensive picture.
So just to quickly pull it all together, to synthesize what we've unpacked from this sermon today. We've seen how the finger of God works as this concentrated metaphor for divine authority and action. It shows up in 4 key ways. First, it writes his law. That establishes eternal truth, absolute permanence, bedrock stuff. Second, it reveals his power. Think instantaneous, undeniable force that overcomes the impossible, like the magicians hitting that wall. Third, it sets people free. This is the deep, transformative deliverance, breaking chains, not just loosening them. And finally, fourth, it guides his children, pointing the way forward towards salvation, steering us clear of confusion and accusation.
And running through all of that is this stark contrast the sermon makes, right? Between the finger of man, weak, temporary, often pointing blame, and the finger of God, which is shown to be mighty, eternal, transforming, and guiding, authoritative. We've really analyzed how this concept, El Dedo de Dios, moves so far beyond just a physical image. It becomes this working definition of how God engages with the world and with us. But we want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought, something to maybe chew on yourself. It builds right on that last point we discussed, the tension between permanence and guidance. Remember the sermon title mentioned on the bulletin? El Dedo de Dios, power, freedom, and direction. We talked about how the finger established ultimate fixed truth by writing on stone. That's permanence, unchanging. But we also talk about how it continuously points the way, provides ongoing daily guidance through life's uncertainties. That's movement, flexibility. So the question to ponder is, How do those two ideas, the absolute fixed nature of God's eternal law and the constant adaptable need for specific moment-by-moment direction, how do they work together?
How does that combination define what makes God's authority truly complete and trustworthy? It's this fascinating interplay between solid foundation and active movement.
Yeah, thinking about how those eternal truths ground us, but then how we need that active guidance to live them out day by day, how one reinforces the other. That's really getting to the heart of applying this kind of knowledge, isn't it?
It really is. Well, thank you so much for sharing these sources and walking us through this deep dive today.
And thank you for listening. We hope this breakdown gives you some clear, synthesized knowledge on a really powerful concept. Hopefully it sparks some further thought on divine authority. Keep learning, keep questioning.
Hey, everybody. That's my last sermon. The next one. For next week's sermon. Just keep moving forward, you guys. What's going on with the world right now? High price, high gas price. Don't depress. Don't be depressed. Be happy. Enjoy yourself. Keep moving forward. The harder the life hit us, keep moving forward. Keep punching. That's the way how I do it. Look at my vision impairment. I can't read small letters. I need to do all this, do Bible audio sermon, because I can't read the letters. I keep moving forward because this fixed income I'm living right now is very hard in this world right now. I just still keep moving forward my life. Keep moving forward. Until my Section 8 come through, the housing, my social worker helped me out. I be patient. I be patient my life. God bless you, you guys. Jesus love you. I pray for you guys every day, every night. Hit the like button, subscribe. Thank you for subscribing. God bless you. Jesus love you.